If we think of when we get married, as part of the vows, we say that um, we will love someone in sickness and in health. But there are limits, and Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia stretches those limits and stretches those ideas to beyond reality.
What is guilt really about underneath?
It's about the ability to do right by the person you love. So if we love someone, then we will, in whatever circumstances, we will look after them, we will take care of them. But we have limits. There are limits to what we can personally do. And it's important to remember that the irony of the situation is that caring deeply creates the vulnerability, which creates the emotion of guilt that we actually feel.
What happens when carers try to do everything right?
So the first thing that happens over a period of time is we get exhausted as carers. As carers, we get burnt out. We are completely emotionally and physically exhausted. The second point is we put impossible standards upon ourselves. We are a harsh critic. We expect unrealistic expectations of ourselves in terms of our caregiving duty. We're constantly monitoring and self-monitoring and criticizing ourselves. So the guilt increases as the standards become completely unreachable. We are humans and we have limits as to actually what we can achieve and what we can actually do, even if it's with our loved one.
What tends to make guilt heavier over time?
There are a number of factors that come into play. The first one is fatigue and burnout. So it's our caregiving duties are relentless, day in, day out, day in, day out. And there is only so much, even as caregivers to our loved ones, that we can take in. And so ultimately, that leads to physically, emotionally being fatigued and being burnt out. The second point is we feel isolated. So although we may have family and we may have friends, we still feel alone in our caregiving responsibilities. No one understands us, what we're actually going through. And another factor which is important is often when we're in this situation, there is a saying, a cliche, which says, you don't see the wood for the trees. So you're unable to create a perspective of what is actually going on. The final point is no one or very few people are reassuring you. You did a great job today. You're not necessarily looking for constant thanks, but occasional reassurance that you're doing the right thing and doing your very best would certainly help would certainly alleviate the guilt.
What situations trigger guilt most?
There are a number of situations which trigger guilt most. The first one is losing your patience. So you're calm, you're collected, you're reasonable, you're rational, but you have limits. And if your caregiving duties are relentless, then there will be situations where and they will be isolated. It is not a situation that is all the time where you will get angry, you will lose patience with your loved one. Also, another factor is that you need help. You can't do this alone. And whether you look to family, whether you look to friends, whether you look to outside agencies, but you will definitely need help and you will need support. Another trigger of guilt will come certainly in later stages when it all gets too much for you, even with or without help. And you might have to consider options of placing your loved one into some kind of care home or assisted living or memory centre. And that causes enormous feelings of guilt in terms of they should be at home. They shouldn't need to go to a care home, an assisted living, a memory centre. And that these feelings, they clash, they cause tension with your own identity and your own values.
What would you want carers to understand about their guilt?
The first and the most important thing is the guilt doesn't mean that you're failing in terms of your caregiving duties. And the key point here is to understand, if you understand the feeling of guilty, more than trying to eliminate it, that is being self-aware, and it's a very good starting point. And then once you have that understanding, then the compassion for yourself, the compassion softens that guilt.
What about guilt do people rarely say out loud?
Very few people talk about the fact that most carers feel guilty. Whether they feel guilty all the time or guilty some of the time, most caregivers still feel guilty. Even those carers or caregivers who appear to be on the outside or superficially doing a great job, they at different points will feel guilty. And that guilt thrives in that silence. The fact that you call it out, you name it, you acknowledge it, that reduces its power. I'm Harvey Zemmel from All About Alzheimer's, and we support caregivers whose loved ones have Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. I've put together a practical guide for carers who experience these emotions day to day. If interested, click the link below.